Greetings and salutations, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the founder and CEO of the Scribblers Den. We are joined for this video by Amenephus, my old chonker of a cat. I do love him so much. He is the oldest of the cats that I have. I think he's like 10 or 11 now, and he definitely has some grumpy cat vibes, but he is wonderful. So he may be sticking around for this video. He might not. We don't know. But today we are going to be exploring the genre conventions and expectations of historical fiction. So of course, genre conventions are important to crafting your story because we're working within a familiar framework for the reader. And many readers will only read within a few specific genres during their lifetime with occasional forays into something new. But for the most part, we do tend to kind of stick with what we know because we enjoy it, right? So as authors, it is vital that we understand the reader's expectations so that we can deliver the story that they're expecting. And this isn't to say that expectations and conventions can't be subverted or reinvented, but in order to push those boundaries, you need to first understand what the conventions are and why. All right, so historical fiction. Generally speaking, for a novel to qualify as historical, it needs to be set at least 50 years prior to when it was written. There are some differing opinions on this, but this is a fairly simple way to decide if your novel qualifies as historical, and the 50-year mark is what seems to be recognized by traditional publishing. Once you've decided that your novel is historical, it's common to then assign it a secondary category to narrow down the breadth of history. Is it a Regency novel, medieval, ancient Greece, Victorian, etc.? Additionally, authors often choose a specific event within that time period that was tumultuous or transformative. And this really helps you to weave in additional tension into your plot and characters, and it gives readers a touchstone by referencing something they've likely heard about before. So you'll see a lot of novels that are based around like World War II or the Civil War, or I'm trying, like, wow, my brain, all of my historical events just out the door, out the window. One day there might be things centered around COVID. Who knows, like another 45 years from now. But it's going to be like a really big thing that has just caused that. So taking your story and setting in that adds that extra tension because not only are we dealing with their like internal conflict and whatever they have going on in their personal lives, but they're also dealing with the bigger, broader context of something tumultuous happening. So focusing in on the historical time period is really important because it's what's going to drive the majority of the factors in your story, like the setting, choices, what's available to them, all those different things. And you're going to need to do rigorous research to ensure that your novel is offering an authentic look at the time period. This includes things like clothing, customs, slang, speech patterns, technology, and so many others. Getting any of those things wrong has the potential to throw your reader out of the story. For me, a certified horse nerd, I immediately notice when tack or equipment is incorrect for the time period that is being portrayed. And my favorite example to talk about is the movie Gladiator from 2002. And they all have metal stirrups, something that was not invented or used in 180 AD when that movie is set. Do I understand why they gave stirrups to Russell Crowe and all the other actors? Absolutely. Does it stick in my head as an anachronism that I feel compelled to point out every time? Also, yes. Horses happen to be my nerdy focus. My dad's is cars. So when we watch a movie, he immediately points out any inaccuracy with cars. And all this to say that if you don't do your research, someone somewhere is going to notice. And it could be small and insignificant like me with a stirrup detail, or it could be much bigger and end up causing you lots of PR problems. So do your research. Ruta Sepetys, author of young adult historical fiction, spends years researching her novels, and the level of detail in them is just fantastic. When you read them, you get a really deep sense of the time period and culture in addition to the amazing story that she's weaving. Every other convention I'm going to talk about for historical fiction is going back to that research piece, right? It's all going to connect back. So we're going to start with the characters in historical novels. They need to speak and behave in the ways that people would have spoken and behaved in that time. So this means researching social norms and cultural values. As the author, you have to be very aware of your own bias toward modern times and be careful that the narrative or characters with modern thoughts and behaviors aren't showing up on the page. And if they are on the page, they have to be showing up in a way that is authentic to that time period, right? This can sometimes also mean that you have to write scenes that are not um, acceptable by today's means. They weren't acceptable then, but people also turned a blind eye to them. Whereas today, we will call them out, right? Um, and it really highlights how important that research is. And you have to think about, why am I including this unsavory part of our history? Is it just because I feel like I have to, like for shock value, or does it actually play a role in the story? And I think that's really worth considering, the roles that some of those unsavory aspects of our history plays in your story. Do they belong in stories? Absolutely. But I think that they need to have a purpose. They need to be there kind of for a reason. And if you're not doing something with them, you're just doing it for like for that shock value, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should reconsider that. But yes, we have to have those gross, unsavory bits of history, because if we don't have them, we're going to forget. So that's really important to have them in. All I'm saying is that we also need to think about, how does it overall fit into the novel and the narrative, and what is the purpose for doing it, and how are you addressing it, and how are you looking at it almost from a modern lens. Like, you're going to acknowledge, yes, this happened, but at some point you still have to have something that kind of like pulls back from that almost sometimes, right? All right, I'm getting a little off topic. In that vein, though, you might even have your fictional characters interacting with very real historical people. So I'm going to go back to Ruta Sepetys here, and she includes very well-researched people who are influential, and they existed during the time periods that she writes about. And her characters either interact directly or indirectly with them. So this could be like a direct conversation, or maybe that character is going to talk to somebody else who works for that person, right? She wrote a great novel called Fountains of Silence, and she has people who work at the house staff. I can't think of what the gentleman's name is now. He was a dictator in Spain, and I can't think of it because it has been 6 years since I read this novel. But so you don't necessarily have some of the main characters interacting with him directly, but they're part of his household staff. And so they can interact with those people and do these different things and get information. And so you're still getting that indirect contact with very significant historical figures who actually existed. This isn't necessarily something that you have to do, but I would recommend that you at least name drop some well-researched people who are influential or maybe lived in the same city or region as your characters, because that's who they would have gossiped about or maybe dreamt of living like, right? And the same thing goes for historical events. Joseph Bruchac's Code Talkers takes the reader through multiple battles in the Pacific Theater during World War II. He did meticulous research with Navajo Marines who'd been there in order to represent those incidents accurately. And because of that, it just adds this brilliant layer to the novel that I think soldiers, if they read it, if they have participated or been part of any type of war, are going to feel the authenticity there of what's happening. And you're going to have people who maybe had grandparents who told them stories about their own experiences in the Pacific Theater during World War II. And when they read it, then that the younger child, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is just like what grandpa said. And I think that it just adds so much authenticity to it. And that is a really important part of historical fiction. Another convention is the inclusion of sensory details to really immerse the reader in the ins and outs of daily life. This can be the description of the fabric, the smell of oil lamps, or using the privy. One of my personal favorites in historical novels is the medical practices. I get a kick out of how we used to treat various conditions, especially those affecting women. I'm like, why did we do this? Why did anyone think that this was a good idea of how we're going to treat this problem? And it's just wild to me. So I like those sensory details because it just really pulls me into the story, and I am almost so offended by what it is. I'm like, wow, like they were gonna cut that off. Like, let's just do that. And it's wild, right? It pulls you in. Now, of course, there is some wiggle room for authors to make some changes. If you're doing this, though, again, you need to have a very clear rationale for why maybe you're going to merge some events or have a historical figure be somewhere that they weren't on a particular day. When done with intention and an acknowledgement that you've made some alterations, the majority of readers are going to be fine with that choice. In the end, though, it still means that you've done your research and you know that you can bend what needs to stay, what you can bend and what needs to stay absolutely true. And a lot of authors will either put a note in the beginning or the end of their novels saying to some effect, like, this is largely based off of this historical event and this things. And I realized that this person was not at this location on this date, but for the purposes of my narrative, I have had them show up. And to me, that builds trust again. I'm saying, okay, this person really did their research and they're acknowledging that this is not quite historically accurate, but here's the reason that they did it, and it was to serve their narrative of their main characters. And so, like I said, they're acknowledging that, hey, this is what the truth is. Here's how I modified it in my work of historical fiction. And I did it for this reason. And I'm like, okay, works for me. Like most other genres, you can combine historical fiction with others. You could have a historical thriller or historical romance. You could even have a historical fantasy, meaning the world is very grounded in a historical period or event, but you've added in some really fantastical elements. Naomi Novik's His Majesty's Dragons does this by adding dragons into the Napoleonic Wars. There's a lot of historical elements. Napoleon shows up, but also dragons. And it was one of my favorite novels that I read. I think I read it back in like 2015, and I don't remember a lot of details because it has been a minute. But I think about it probably like several times a year. And as I was writing this, what I wanted to say in this video, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the perfect novel to talk about because there's so much research that went in, but also dragons. All right, guys, those are the basics of the conventions for historical fiction. Research forms the base of all of them. So start doing those deep dives and taking notes. I would love to hear what your favorite historical novels are, as I'm always looking to add to my TBR. Please drop the titles in the comments below. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Happy writing, Scribblers.